Hey everyone, welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 218, Geopolitics. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. There's a docket description beneath the video for you to follow along with. And give you guys 90 seconds to come in. Joe Black, what's going on? Brother Truth Be Told, what's going on? Yep, I'm still doing IT mentorship, so if anybody wants to be mentored on getting into IT or making a transition from another position in IT, I can help you out with that. Yeah, the British have never really had a admiration for Trump. You know, everything has always been adversarial with him. If you remember when he ran for president, they blocked his plane, his Trump plane, from actually flying into London airspace. So that shows you the extent that they tried to go. Am I here? What's going on? hmm You know, London. You know, the United Kingdom has its own problems. The whole Brexit thing. So definitely, I think Trump is the last of their worries, but he's still a thorn in their side because of the far right, and you have the far left over in United United Kingdom, and you have Labour Party and whatnot. So I'll give you guys another 60 seconds to come in, and then we just get started. All right, we'll get started now. Hey, what's going on, line though? Rolling Black, what's going on? Brother, truth be told, I have not seen that. I have not seen that myself. So, all right. So, first one on the docket is from MiamiHerald.com. Haitian senators ransacked parliament in failed effort to ratify a new government. Haiti's third attempt to ratify a new government and prime minister ended in chaos Thursday when a vote in the country's Senate was interrupted as four opposition senators ransacked the chamber, dragging chairs, desks, and other furniture onto the lawn, and police fired tear gas at protesters. The act was captured on video in front of Parliament security and Haitian National Police officers who had been called to beef up security for Thursday's vote. The vandalism was immediately condemned by United Nations, U.S., Canada, and others in the international community. These deplorable events go against democratic principles. Canada's ambassador in Haiti, Andre uh, Frenet, tweeted, Canada is calling for national dialogue aiming at solutions to the security, economic, and social crisis that is affecting the Haitian population. Haiti has been without a working government for more than 2 months, costing the impoverished nation more than $120 million in aid from international financial institutions aimed at helping the country prepare for the upcoming hurricane season, shoring up rapidly deteriorating economy. It was the country's third attempt to ratify a new government and confirm nominated Prime Minister Jean Michel Lepin after the lower chamber of deputies abruptly fired ex-Prime Minister Jean Henry Sion. Hearing about the opposition senators' actions, some of their militant supporters from the nearby slums converged outside the Haitian parliament's gates and tried to get inside. They were stopped by police and parliament security. A clash ensued with police, who responded by firing tear gas. So that's a picture of the aftermath of them taking all the furniture out. The violence extended to Grand Rue, a central street of Port-au-Prince, where flaming barricades were erected and a truck from the government's Centre National des Equipments construction agency was set on fire. So I wish Jack or Zoe Royalty was here can actually speak to some of the stuff that's happening on the ground because I know they have family down there. But it's interesting that the United States wants to condemn this, right? But they have no problem allowing opposition members to take over the embassy building in Washington D.C. From the Venezuelan government. It is very polarized views that the United States seems to have when it comes to this type of stuff. And you think that the Canadians would be a little bit more neutral on this, but the Canadians have a vested interest in this. More importantly, Ottawa. The French Canadians seem to have a vested interest in Haiti. What's going on, Nagon?
Hey, what's going on, fam? What's going on, man? Just chiming in, just listening in.
Hey, what's going on, Rosie Reyes? E Raptor, what's going on? Yeah, I just think that a lot of this stuff has been manufactured by outside powers. I know it sounds cliche because we talk about outside powers and outside influence all the time, but they were getting cheap gas or cheap oil from Venezuela for a long time as a relief effort to the Haitian country. They were paying 25 cents a gallon on gas. And somehow, some way, these new people in government basically, up the price on gas, from what it was to something really high. I think a few bucks or something like that, and people just rallied. Rioted. So there's some spooky stuff going on as to why it's unstable now, to the point where it's almost in a civil war.
Well, the name of the game is the last thing they want to have is Haiti and some of these other Caribbean countries really forming up, being unified, working with countries like Venezuela and so forth. I think it really, once again, this may sound cliche, but it goes back to the old Monroe Doctrine, and the United States does not want to have any other kinds of powers working in concert in their hemisphere.
Yeah. Yeah, the Monroe Doctrine is a old doctrine from James Monroe, um, in 18 that was ratified in the 1800s, early 1800s. So no other military will sail its ships and operate in the backyard of the United States, which is what the Monroe Doctrine is basically about. It's outdated and antiquated doctrine, but that's that's the premise. All right, let me
Yeah,
get to the next article.
yeah, that's definitely the premise. So here we're back to that. So um, you know, it's going to be a tough road to hoe. I think you're going to have a lot of countries kind of working together here. And that's also not to say that the United States may not actually get involved with maybe some military action if people are really successful. So I don't know. Anyway, all right, Mike.
All right, let me get to this next one. All right, this next one is from AlJazeera.com. Erdogan, no step back from S-400 deal with Russia. Turkish president says U.S. offer to sell Patriot missiles to Ankara is not as good as Russia's S-400 offer. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said his country would not step back from an S-400 missile deal with Russia, again defying U.S. threats. Last week, a top Pentagon official said the consequences would be devastating for Turkey's joint F-35 fighter program and its cooperation with NATO if the country went ahead with plans to buy the Russian anti-aircraft weapon system. There is an agreement. We have determination. It is an it is out of the question to take a step back from it, Erdogan told reporters in Istanbul on Tuesday. He also said an offer from the United States to sell Patriot missiles to Turkey was not as good as the Russian offer. Ties between the NATO allies have strained over Ankara's decision to buy the S-400 missile system, which Washington says could compromise its F-35 fighter jets that Ankara is also set to buy. U.S. officials urged Turkey to buy Patriot missiles rather than S-400 from Moscow, arguing it is incompatible with NATO weapon systems. Ankara responded saying it was the U.S. refusal to sell Patriots to Turkey that led it to seek other vendors, adding Russia offered a better deal, including technology transfers. Catherine Wilbarger, acting U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense for International Security Affairs, said the planned S-400 purchase would damage Turkey's ability to work with NATO. She said the U.S. administration, even if it does not want to punish Turkey for the purchase, could be forced to do so by a Congress unsympathetic to Ankara. Turkey has suggested the two countries form a working group to assess the potential effects of the S-400 on F-35 aircraft, which was reportedly accepted by Washington. Turkey plans to buy 100 F-35s, and some Turkish pilots have already started training with counterparts in the United States. Erdogan said on Tuesday he told Washington that Ankara would take steps to buy the Patriots only if its conditions of delivery were on positive as Russia's. But unfortunately, we haven't received a positive proposal from the American side of the subject of Patriots like the S-400 from Russia. The U.S. has threatened to impose sanctions on Turkey if it goes through with the purchase of the Russian missile system, a move that would further damage Turkey's economy. Turkey's currency, the lira, has declined about 14% this year, in part because of concerns over the potential U.S. sanctions. Erdogan and U.S. President Donald Trump are expected to meet on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Osaka, Japan. at the end of June. In addition to the issue of the S-400, Turkey-U.S. ties are already under strain over American support of a Syrian Kurdish militia in Syria, viewed as terrorists by Ankara. So Turkey is expected to take delivery of these systems by the end of the year. Um, and because of that, the U.S. is nervous that a system like this means that they lean closer to the east and not to the west. Turkey's GDP, or annual GDP with the United States is like less than $9 billion. I think with Russia is something like $19 billion. So what you're looking at here is an imbalance, a trade imbalance between um, Russia and America in terms of Turkey. So Turkey has a lot of vested interest in working with Russia as opposed to the United States. If they decide not to work with the United States, it's not going to hurt them as much. But not working with Russia can actually cripple Turkey's economy. Um, Turkey knows that they need some form of air defense system because they don't have a Patriot missile battery in place. So without some form of aerial defense, they're basically sitting ducks because their weakness isn't so much maritime security, but it's more about air superiority. They can't defend themselves without an air defense system. So, all right, let me get to the next one. All right, this one is from NBCNews.com. Israel strikes Syria after rockets fired at Golan Heights. Syria state media said 3 soldiers were killed in the second such flare up in a week. The Israeli military said its aircraft struck Syrian army targets on Sunday after rockets were fired at the Golan Heights. And Syria's state media said 3 soldiers were killed in the second such flare-up in the week. Syrian television reported a big explosion near Damascus before dawn and said air defenses had confronted the enemy. The Israeli military said it struck in a Syrian artillery and aerial defense batteries in retaliation for Saturday's firing of 2 rockets at the Israeli-occupied Golan Heights. An Israeli military spokeswoman said, let me finish reading this real quick. An Israeli military spokeswoman said it was still unclear who had fired the rockets, but the Syrian army was held responsible for any attack launched from Syrian territory. We will not tolerate any firing into our territory, and we will respond with great force to any aggression against us, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said in a statement. On Monday, Israel's military said it attacked a Syrian anti-aircraft position that had fired on one of its warplanes, and Syrian state media said a soldier had been killed in the incident. In recent years, Israel has carried out hundreds of strikes in Syria against its regional arch foe, Iran, and the Lebanese Hezbollah group, which it calls the biggest threat to its borders. Iran and Hezbollah are fighting on the side of the president Bashar al-Assad in the Syrian war. Israel says they are trying to turn Syria into a new front against Israelis. Syria lost the Golan Heights to Israel in the 1967 Middle East War. Israel later annexed the captured territory in a move unrecognized by most of the international community except the United States. President Donald Trump announced U.S. recognition for Israel or Israeli sovereignty over the Golan in March. The White House said on Wednesday that National Security Advisor John Bolton and his Israeli and Russian counterparts will meet in Jerusalem this month to discuss regional security issues. Russia intervened militarily in the Syrian war on Assad's behalf in 2015, turning the tide on the war. So Israel says somebody threw something over its over the wall, and suddenly that gives them grounds to attack their military.
Okay, this is my question. Did that even happen? Okay, did they even really do that? Okay, there's a lot of questions with that because, you know, Israel has been trying to really crush and knock Syria out of the box, you know, for quite a while. They know they're being backed up by Iran and by Russia. They want them out. They want them destroyed. So they'll come up with anything. They'll come up with any kind of idea to say that this is what's going on. Meanwhile, while they're in Gaza expanding their borders and doing what they need to do as far as they're concerned, you know, with Israeli hegemony, they're going to sit here and try to say the Syrians are attacking their border and they're a threat to them. I find this rather incredulous. I don't actually even believe. I have questions about the veracity of the story. I actually do.
Yeah, because they didn't go to the United Nations for a security resolution on what to do about a mortar fire into their territory. And what does Syria really gain by firing mortars or rockets into Golan Heights? What's the value of that, right? They're still trying to clean up their own country.
It doesn't make any sense because there's actually virtually nothing to gain. So I'm sitting here looking at this like, really? I like I said, I've been watching this region, literally since I was, with Professor Anderson's class in Syracuse back in the '80s, and watching all this stuff going on, and I just don't buy it. I don't buy anything. I don't think almost anything coming out of the Likud party's government and Netanyahu. I think and most of the stuff strains credulity. I don't believe any of it. I think these guys are looking for more reasons to get in here to try to get their invasion game going, of which I think it would be a tinderbox to blow up that whole Middle East. But I think Israel is actually prepared to do this.
Yeah, at the expense of the Americans.
For a few different reasons. Absolutely correct. And you have Trump and these guys here. They're incapable of really handling this kind of issue. Politically, the way they need to handle it in the region. Obama and them, they were really trying to work a real, a real kind of deal there. And of course, you have that very extremist right-wing party that Netanyahu is coming out of, and they're trying not to do business. But we did have some military eyes trained in that area, but they don't have that right now. And Pompeo and these guys, I don't think are really up to this challenge. This could be a real problem. You got to keep your eyes on Israel, man. They are an existential threat in that region and can cause a tremendous amount of problems for us. And I know there are a lot of people that don't want us to say that. They don't want us to say that. But unfortunately, I have to look at it for what it is.
Hey, DE, what's going on?
DE.
Good evening, everybody.
What's going on, fam? What you think?
Well, what you're saying is on point. The other thing, the third side of this coin is the Israeli military-industrial complex.
Absolutely.
Everybody looks at the U.S. military-industrial complex, but they don't see the Israeli side. And the Israeli side is bigger than what people think.
No. Excellent point.
Well,
excellent point.
We know, but our audience don't know. Our audience think that Israel is getting billions of dollars from the U.S. every year. But Israel, if you look at the Israeli network, they will take America's missiles that America sells, and they will turn around and sell them to somebody else. They will make modifications to them. They even did it for Turkey. I don't know if you know about that.
But they're developing their own technology now
exactly.
to
That's
sell.
what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, yeah.
They make modifications to the nav system and sell it. Their people are the ones who are carrying on the war in Syria. Their people, through the proxy of the Saudis, are carrying the war in the south in Syria. And you ask the question if it was done, and if it was done, who did it? When you ask those questions, the Saudis did it through their proxy. So Israel have an excuse to do what? Bomb. They're lucky that there are two things that's going on that people don't talk about. Is that the Russians and the Chinese are keeping the Iranians and the Turks at bay. They
Yeah,
are
but
holding back these two nations, and they're
and
holding back Assad too, and Egypt in a way.
well, in some ways, but what they're really concerned about is Iran's power in the region, and the Saudis, who are Arabs as opposed to the Iranians
Persia,
who are Persians,
right?
are different, and the Saudis really want the Iranian influence to be reduced, and so they are certainly working with the Israelis on this to do this as well, and it's a funky game going down, and we're kind of standing by almost, kind of watching this, and we really need some real leadership in the region to kind of keep this from going to where I think this thing might lead. Mike, do you have anything to add on that, or do you think we're in the wrong direction, or how do you kind of see it?
No, I think you're in the right direction. I think you're very warm, if not hot. The issue is that Israel needs water. The state of Israel needs water in order to survive.
Mm-hmm.
The water is inside southern Lebanon. In order to
Mm-hmm.
get that water, they would have to take Lebanon to war, and that means taking on Hezbollah, and to deny Syria the opportunity to intervene and deny Iraq and Iran from intervening as well. In Egypt as well. Egypt would be very concerned about um, their shipping lanes being compromised because of Israeli Navy um, forcing a blockade, on Egypt. So at this point,
And
the
Turkey as
idea is,
well with the water. Turkey as well. But anyway, go ahead.
mhm. And the idea here is that make the Saudis tripwire Iran into a conflict, bog them down over there. Um, Syria has been dismantled in terms of a military response. Iraq has been dismantled in terms of a military response in 2003. Um, and Egypt is basically the only wild card here in terms of what they can do. Lebanon doesn't have any real military formation because they've been denied by the United Nations through a resolution issued by Israel that Lebanon cannot have any advanced military weapons to defend itself. This is the most absurd thing I've ever heard of. That they should be victims, but they should also be not have the capabilities to respond. uh, They should also not have the ability to respond to Israeli aggression in the southern region. They basically have dismantled the Middle East by all in one swoop without firing a shot.
Agreed.
Hmm. Let me get to this next article. Uh, there's about 30 people watching. Only about 15 likes. If you're not going to participate in the chat, just hit the like button, please. All right, this next one is from oilprice.com. U.S. forces blow up 3 oil tankers in Syria, enforcing oil embargo. U.S. forces have led U.S. led forces have blown up 3 oil tankers in Syria as the United States increases its pressure on Syria by thwarting the oil trade between the PKK, YPG, and the Assad regime, according to the local sources quoted by several media sources. The strike was carried about by coalition planes, which hit 3 oil tankers, leaving 4 dead. The coalition has not yet made a statement about the attack. In the area controlled by Assad, oil consumption stands at around 136,000 barrels per day. Production, meanwhile, is only 24,000 barrels per day. This means that the regime must import significant volumes of crude oil at an estimated expense of more than $2 billion per year. The attack comes a couple of weeks after the EU extended its sanctions on the Assad regime for 1 year after the Syrian regime upped the ante in repressing the Syrian people, bringing the Syrian crisis to a boiling point. Reports surfaced weeks ago that Iran had resumed oil shipments to Syria in the wake of U.S. sanctions on the former, with 1 million barrels arriving in Syria from Iran on May 5th. Further illicit oil shipments may be coming as a new border crossing between Iraq and Syria is currently under construction. Fox News reported last week, based on satellite imagery revealing that construction is underway. In Syria, Arab residents of oil-rich Deir Zor area began protests in April against U.S.-backed Kurdish forces that control the region to the east of the Euphrates. The protests disrupted the oil flows from nearby fields, most of which had been controlled by the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces since the end of 2017. The fuel and electricity shortages that are occurring now in Syria have soured previous supporters of Assad against his rule. Iran, who has poured billions into Syria to prop up the Assad regime in recent years, is now feeling the U.S. pressure on both ends. One at home, as its oil exports are restricted, and another in Syria. This is serious business. They're basically going to try to starve the Syrians out. What I would do if I was Russia, I would allow Turkey to go in there and just clean out the Kurds. Then they'll push them back. I mean, the Kurds don't have any sort of real armored cover to hide under. I mean, they may hide in some mountains or something like that, but they're not gonna, they don't have the capabilities to to take on a full state military like the Turkish military. So if the Kurds are allegedly withholding all of this oil back from Assad, I say let Turkey have at them then. DE, you have anything you want to say?
This thing, the Kurds there, they play a role in what Israel wants, but it's not really about the Kurds. It's about Israel, and Israel can't let Syria. Syria already is retaking its territory, and if other nations that see that how Syria went about do this, and they do it. Suppose Iraq, for instance, started, cleaning out the terrorists. After Syria cleaned out their terrorists, the created by the Europeans and the Israelis and the Saudis. Now Iraq starts doing the same thing. Iraq and Iran is already building a coalition. Syria and Iran already have the coalition. What he's seeing is that the countries are liberating themselves and forming a coalition with the one country that the Saudis and the Israelis fear most.
Mm-hmm.
So this is if you guys had looked at what's called one of the things that Netanyahu did is he went to Russia and talked to Russia. The Saudis went to Russia and talked to Russia. That wasn't about oil. Yeah, it was about oil, but it was also about, hey, what are you doing? You letting these Iranians loose? That was about.
Yeah. The meeting between Saudi Arabia and Russia was more about OPEC, because Russia is not a member of OPEC, but they do play a strategic role in the OPEC's activity, because Russia pumps out a lot of oil themselves. So if they flood the market, then that affects Russia, and vice versa. It affects the price of oil. So that's what that meeting was about. Maybe they did talk about Iran and Lebanon and Syria, but for all intents and purposes, that was initially about the OPEC meeting. But I get your point. Nicole, you have anything to add to that?
Look, you gotta understand that the U.S., Russia, Israel, and the Europeans. Well, the Europeans not so much, but they went in. You remember when they got together and drove the price of oil down to like, what was it, $40 a gallon, a barrel? That was to take out the Russian economy, and the Russian who didn't know that. So now the Saudis are coming hat in hand saying, look, hey, we would like to raise the price of oil, and it's going to benefit you, by the way. That's what they went there to do. So it was.
Well, it also affected Saudi Arabia, because Saudi Arabia's books are not being balanced with the price of oil being so low.
Exactly. So they got hand in hand, and they were forced into this because of Russia going into Syria. If Russia had stayed out of Syria, the Saudis were never going to talk to Putin. Never. They would think that them and America could bring Putin to his knees. They still had the plan.
The Russian presence in Syria was a big problem for Israel and the Saudis. Big issue.
Oh, yeah.
Big problem. So that's what's ginning up a lot of this activity as well. So,
yes.
Let's look at it not only from its economic but from its military perspective. It's problematic.
All right. But yeah, the Americans taking out those tankers makes you wonder what else do they have in store for this. So
that is a strategic move. That it's not much Americans can do right now, because they're pushing hard against the Chinese, and China is kind of like creating a problem for them in the east, and they're trying to. They're not even talking about Ukraine anymore, because they're trying to kind of keep that out of the news. But America can't do very much. They were forced to pull out of Syria in a way. There was no option in Syria over the next coming 5 years like they stayed in Iraq. So they were forced to pull out of Syria. So this was a strategic move. If we hit the oil tankers, then we can delay this move coming up. And they're going to do that, but there's not much they can do unless they get the Israelis to keep shooting missiles into Syria.
All right, this next one is from ABC News. Iran's foreign minister Javad Zarif says U.S. sanctions are economic terrorism. Iran will not be intimidated by President Trump's art of the deal pressure by using economic sanctions to push Iran to negotiate a new nuclear deal, the country's top diplomat told ABC News. In an exclusive interview, Iran Foreign Minister Javad Zarif also told this week's co-anchor Martha Raddatz that there will be consequences if the United States keep up keeps up its pressure, economic pressure campaign against Iran's people. There was jubilation in the streets of Tehran 4 years ago in hopes that the lifting of economic sanctions under the nuclear deal worked out between the United States, Iran, and the European Union would improve conditions. But when the Trump administration imposed the sanctions again, the double-digit economic growth of recent years was replaced by an economic downturn as Iran's oil exports have plunged. The International Monetary Fund says that Iran's economy shrank by 3.9% and inflation spiked 31% in 2018. The predictions it could rise to 37% this year. Prices for red meat and poultry climbed by 57%, vegetables by 47%, and milk, cheese, and eggs by 37%, according to the Statistical Center of Iran. Zarif labeled the new U.S. sanctions as economic terrorism that targets ordinary Iranian people because even though food and medicine was exempted from the sanctions, the financial transactions associated with them are not. If the objective of President Trump is to impose pressure on normal Iranians, on ordinary Iranians, he is certainly achieving that, Zarif said, but he would not achieve his policy objectives through pressure on the Iranians. President Trump has said that he is willing to engage in new talks with Iran toward negotiating a new and tougher nuclear deal. I want to get along with everybody if possible. I even want to get along with Iran, and Iran wants to talk, President Trump told reporters on Thursday, and if they want to talk, I'm available. His top diplomat seconded that Sunday. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was said in Switzerland, "We are prepared to engage in a conversation with no preconditions. We are ready to sit down with them. But the American effort to fundamentally reverse the malign activity of this Islamic Republic, this revolutionary force, is going to continue." Zarif, however, said the prospects of potential talks are not very likely because talking is the continuation of the process of pressure. So a lot of people don't know that Israel was the one who pushed for, denuclearization in Iran. It was to slow Iran down from producing nuclear material, whether it was civilian or military purposes. And if you look at history, the last 10 years or so, you'll see that Iranian scientists, nuclear scientists, have been assassinated on the streets of Tehran in drive-bys. So there's a vested interest in keeping Iran from enriching nuclear material because that keeps Iran stymied. I would also say that Saudi Arabia has a vested interest in this as well as the UAE, because they don't have nuclear weapons. They have hinted at the idea of going to Pakistan and getting nuclear material, but I don't know how far they'll get with that. I don't think that the Pakistanis really have any interest in, putting nuclear material on layaway, for other Islamic governments, because they could probably use it against them too. So in saying now that the Russians actually worked out the deal, despite what the article says, the Russians actually worked out a deal. They actually wrote the whole entire nuclear arrangement, the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action on Nuclear Enrichment for the Iranians under the Obama administration, which is why they were able to get the deal through. However, the Israelis did not like that, and the Israelis wanted to go back to the table, and that's where we are today. They used Trump to actually do that. There's really nothing wrong with the deal. If you actually get a chance to look at the deal online, the paperwork online, there's really nothing wrong with the deal. It stops the Iranians from enriching for 10 years, which is not that bad. They wouldn't be able to enrich until 2026 or 2027 or something to that effect. So why the need to ratify the deal doesn't make any sense because they weren't producing any material to begin with, at least according to the IAEA.
But you did mention one that the main problems of this thing is that Iran, if they're going to produce, they're going to build a nuclear power plant, all the power that they produce means that they don't have to use um, the oil that they can put on the market. The second thing is that the Iranians, if you're going to move away from an oil um, producing as your only industry, your primary industry, if it's making 60-70% of your income, country's income, and you start moving into other industries, it's going to challenge Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is pumping oil primarily. Um, Saudi Arabia don't even grow much food in Saudi Arabia. The nation doesn't have the population to do what it's supposed to do. If the Iranians expand their economy into the other like say fruits, vegetables, and if they're self-sufficient in these things and don't have to spend the oil money to buy these things, the nation as a whole is going to be stronger. And you can't have a strong Israel. Don't want that kind of strong nations in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia don't want Iran that strong. And there goes the problem. The Saudis are paying off the U.S. It actually paying for the U.S. The Saudis and its proxies are paying for the U.S. to stay in the Middle East, and the Israelis are controlling what the U.S. do with them.
All right, let me jump to this next one. All right, this next one is from the BBC.com. Venezuela crisis. What happened to uprising against Maduro? The big question is why they have backed out. Although this Washington Post article weaves quite a convincing tale of the intrigue. What is clear is that it was sophisticated. It was a sophisticated scheme, the like of which we most probably will not see again soon. Discontent at the top did expose fractures in the Maduro government, suggesting the president has been weakened by internal tensions. But 1 month on, neither he nor the opposition, headed by National Assembly Speaker Juan Guaido, seems capable of vanquishing the other in a bold, definitive move. Instead, they have begun wary talks in a new peace process in Oslo, mediated by the Norwegians. In the in the meantime, Venezuelans who thought the attempted uprising might stem the tide of their misery have gone back to business of surviving. Quite literally. So, for one young woman with whom I stopped to chat near the center of Caracas, she told me she had been in the hospital for 2 months awaiting surgery for her cracked vertebrae, but it had not happened in the end because the doctors ran out of supplies, including disinfectants. Out of 10 women who did have surgeries during her time there, she said she went home with a bacterial infection contracted in the operating theater, including one who was paralyzed by meningitis. Such horror stories are endemic in the oil-rich nation now in the grip of a profound economic crisis, brought on by years of government mismanagement and corruption, and compounded by low oil prices. The most vulnerable, of course, are the children. Maria Gutierrez is one of the is on the front lines of the battle against malnutrition in the slum of Pretare, Venezuela's largest. She makes sure that the neediest children in her neighborhood eat once a day, serving up a carefully composed meal of rice, vegetables, and meat, cooked in her small kitchen and paid for by an opposition organization. Look, she told me, pulling forward two boys. Look how they are. Look how short they are. Her son, the same age, was twice as tall. Even in Venezuela slums, people used to have enough to eat because they got food subsidized by the socialist government. They still got some of that, but much less as the economic crisis deepens. And it will almost certainly get worse with crippling U.S. sanctions. That that is the main strategy by which the Trump administration aims to force Mr. Maduro out of office and help Mr. Guaido replace him with a transitional government that organizes new presidential elections. The U.S. expectation was that the powerful military would switch sides. This, as we have seen, has not happened, at least not yet. And negotiations were not part of the plan. The only thing to negotiate with Nicolas Maduro is the conditions of his departure, the State Department said in Oslo talks. Neither, for now it seems, is the military intervention, despite threatening rhetoric that all options are on the table. But a number of Venezuelans told me they were open to outside intervention, despairing of any other solution to the political impasse. We need the Marines, said one elderly man, condemning government ministers as bloodsuckers and dismissing Guaido-led opposition as ineffective. Why aren't they here yet? Another elderly man in the same neighborhood also had little use for the government, but he was a supporter of the left-wing political ideology associated with former President Hugo Chavez and ostensibly shared by his successor. I'm still a Chavista, he said, then paused. Why am I still a Chavista, he asked, rhetorically. Even I don't know. Perhaps I suggested he was not a Madurista. As in all failed states, there is wealth. Some some comes from old money, some from new money acquired through corruption or by one or by those who have otherwise benefited from their ties to the regime. We stay in this bubble of affluence at a five-star hotel that has seen better days. I had a severe allergic reaction to the dirty air filters, but but there was water, power, and internet. It was a paradise. Uh, that's a little melanated child right there. So for those of you who think that throwing Nicolas Maduro out is going to somehow provide 3 meals a day, you're solely mistaken. So my take on this is that the whole entire operation is botched from the get go. There was no way that they were going to usurp the president after he had already won the elections. Um, whether they were fair or not um, is irrelevant. Um, but for all intents and purposes, it was fair according to the people on the ground. However, the United States did not like this, and because they did not like it, they decided they wanted to get this guy out and put a millennial in charge, and that somehow, some way, this millennial would stabilize the country, and the problems that they have right now would somehow magically go away. Um, one person is not responsible for all of this in terms of the current state of affairs in Venezuela, because Venezuela issues are much bigger than one man. Do you have anything you want to add to this?
What they did, Venezuela had a set up program where the oil, the money that was supposed to go was made from the oil, was deposited in different banks to pay for different things. Like the bank, the golden eagle was set up to pay for, say, food that Venezuela buys from other nations, the EU. New York City Bank, medication from the US. There was one in Portugal, I think it's Portugal or Italy, that bank was to pay for like situations like what you were talking about just now with this woman who was ill in the hospital waiting for operation. If they can perform that operation in Venezuela, that account, the hospital could get in touch with a hospital in the US or EU and directly and send that person to that hospital directly. And the hospital will just charge that account. The government had nothing to do with any of these things. The private sector, which all the rich Venezuelans are part of, these were the people who could go into the bank in Citibank and say, hey, we imported this. Here are the receipts from what we imported. Give us our money. The government had nothing to do with that. These contracts were signed by Petrobras, PDVSA, and
Yes.
the private sector. And they collected their money directly from PDVSA, not from the government. The US government took all of that money. So these people who are complaining, they don't know. They think that the government is at fault for this, but they don't know. And the government, I will blame the government too, because the government should have put out this information. Say, hey, look, here's what we have done on your behalf. We have put this money here. We have put this money there. It's supposed to be, and this is how it's being spent. But they didn't do that. So now you got the poor, ignorant people, uneducated, who are saying, well, we are not getting treated well. Here's the one and his people coming in and helping us to feed, giving us a little bit of food. But guess what? They are not taking the $2 billion that they get. They're giving 2 million to the people. Who else is stealing the rest of the money? One of his gang is got the money from Citibank. Where did it go? You see what I'm saying? So it's the
Yeah.
ignorant people who don't have an idea of what's going on that this article went to find something to print.
Mm-hmm.
That's for what I'm seeing.
Nagon, you have anything to add?
I'm sorry, I was just on another call here for a second. No, I'm just a little bit behind here. So I need to play just a little bit of catch up. I do apologize. I was just on a call that I had to take, and so I'm sorry. I apologize, but right at this very second, no. Let me just get up to speed here a little bit. Go ahead.
All right. Yeah, indeed. I'm glad you brought all these instances up, because a lot of people don't know that when Chavez was in power, was paying for low income programs for Black people in New York.
He actually sent gasoline into Harlem and some of the Black-owned stations that were there, at an extraordinarily cut rate price, and that got a lot of people tight about that. So they started to look at the economic connections between Venezuela, black community in the United States, economically empowering them and helping. It became very problematic, very much so. Chavez understood what was going on, and that was a problem. So good mark one eyeball on that one there, Mike. You're dead on the money.
Hey, do you remember John? Was it Joseph? Was it Joseph Kennedy or John F. Kennedy? Not John F. Kennedy. Oh shoot! One of the Kennedy's sons, the one that got killed in that so-called plane crash. He was running one of the programs that provided heating oil to people all over the Northeast, given by Venezuela.
Yeah, you're talking about John Jr. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. He was running the program. And throughout the Caribbean, gasoline and oil and diesel oil, diesel fuel.
Yeah, Haiti. Yeah, we covered that earlier in the hangout that Haiti was getting recently, up until recently, we're getting dirt cheap oil from Venezuela, paying 25 cents a gallon on gas. But you have these people who come to these hangouts and say that socialism is a failure. Get rid of Maduro. He's a bum. He's out of here. He's a thief. He's a dictator. He's this. He's that. And the picture we just went over in the article showed a little melanated child, a little black child there, who's suffering because the sanctions and pressure from Washington is affecting how they live. So why would you want to see the overthrow of a government who's looking out for the best interests of people who look just like you? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, people are not looking at it from a three-dimensional perspective. They're looking at one side, and if you're looking at one side, you're trying to take a stance from let's say a ultra conservative side or so forth. You're not going to look at this thing the way you need to look at it. And black people, we have to think, more three-dimensionally, politically, and that's a tough thing to ask for in this country. And the way the media and things the way the media has things shaped up, you got to read a lot and look at a lot of information and really kind of look at this thing three-dimensionally, and that's tough. Most people are not going to do that, unfortunately.
Yeah, there's so many issues. There's so many issues that are cascading from all of this that most people don't have the foresight to actually do the research on. You can't just put up an article and say that this guy is bad because he didn't pay his bills. This is a nation state. This isn't some dude on the corner selling mixtapes. This isn't some guy selling oils and incense. This is a whole entire country. They're not that poor. The money that they do have has been confiscated by outside forces. And then you're saying, well, they can't afford to pay their bills. Well, yeah, they can't afford to pay their bills because they keep getting robbed.
That's a fact, and people have to know that. But if you don't, and you're not that aware of it, then you're going to make other types of statements. So that's the key why getting into this information is important, because people have to see this. And many people do not know what's going on there, and you're not going to get it properly. You're not going to get it properly from MSNBC. You're not, unfortunately, and you're certainly not going to get it from Fox News properly. So you have to look at other sources. That's what's bad, but that's why anyone who is just glued to one media source here in this country, you're only getting just a very limited part of the picture.
Professor Gerald Horne said not too long ago he doesn't understand why black people in America aren't linking up with Venezuelans, people in Latin America, because there's a lot more people down here that look like you than not. So we talked about this yesterday on cultural intelligence, learning the second language, and being able to build relationships on the ground with other groups of people.
Excellent point. Dr. Gerald Horne, he's of the belief, and if you read any of his books, and I've read 3 of them so far, and this guy's a genius, but You know, just an exceedingly brilliant guy. But one of his basic tenets is the reason why you have a lot of issues with black folks and other people in the world, especially here in the not only in the continent but especially here in the Western Hemisphere, is because we're not working together. We have been separated, and we're not able to, and we have not been able to literally coalesce and link up in such a way where we're able to form very strong coalitions in which to battle a lot of what we're dealing with. We have not done that, and he believes of correctly, of course, and not so much believes, but says, this is a big part of our problem, and that's why and he very much is a Pan Africanist, but also a Pan African an Africanist of the diaspora as well, from a standpoint of African derived peoples that exist all around the diaspora of the world, especially here in the West, where you have more black people in, say, a country like Brazil than you have anywhere else in the Western world, except Nigeria, as many of us know. But we're not linking up at all. We're not linking up at all, and we see what's going on. So that is one of his key tenets he lays out there. We are not linking up at all culturally, economically, and so we're not doing any of this, and that's why we have the problems. We're separated, so it's easy to keep a lot of dysfunction and craziness going on in our nations, literally down to the microcosm of your families almost, because of that. And if we did that and linked up together, it would change a lot of things rather quickly, rather quickly. Generation time, almost 20 years, things could flip right around. I know people don't believe that, but that's exactly. But if you read him and read a lot of what he has to say, he consistently harps on these types of points because of what he has seen and studied throughout history.
All right, this next one is from Newsweek.com. Russia confirms military forces remain in Venezuela after Donald Trump said they were moved. Russia's officials said the country's military personnel remain in Venezuela, where they are backing leader Nicolas Maduro, even after President Trump assured his Twitter followers that the Russian troops had been withdrawn from the country. On Twitter Monday, President Trump said Russia had informed him that they have removed most of the people from Venezuela. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told reporters on Tuesday that I'm sorry, I got distracted by that the ad on the side of the on the side of the website. You all paying attention to this? There's a fight going on between the right and the left in United Kingdom. This is recent, very interesting stuff. Anyways, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov told reporters on Tuesday that Russian officials had not been in touch with Trump about the presence of Russian troops in the South American country, and the Russian operatives remain in Venezuela, where they are continuing with cooperation with Maduro and his backers. We don't know what removed most of the people means, Peskov told reporters during a press briefing. In fact, there are specialists there who serviced the hardware shipped to Venezuela earlier. This process is going in an orderly manner. Peskov hinted that Trump may have been referring to media reports that claimed that Russia had withdrawn several key defense advisors from Venezuela. Russia uses its defense support as an arm of its foreign policy and has ramped up military cooperation in African countries in the wake of Western sanctions. The country also increased its military support to Venezuela as the U.S. began advocating for regime change there. A report in the Wall Street Journal Monday alleged that contractors from the Russian state-owned company Rostec have exited Venezuela due to ongoing economic crisis and the Maduro government's inability to pay them. The defense contractors, however, denied the report in a statement. The Wall Street Journal overestimated the numbers of Rostec staff in Venezuela by dozens. The composition of our presence there remains unchanged for many years, Rostec said in a statement on Tuesday. As technical experts, they come to the country from time to time in order to repair previously delivered equipment and provide technical maintenance. For example, we have recently completed technical maintenance of a batch of aircraft. So the Wall Street Journal article was sent to us by a former member of the Black Brain Trust, and was boasting about this concept of, or this constructed story, that the Russians were leaving Venezuela, and that somehow, some way, that spelled the downfall of Nicolas Maduro, and that was never the case. My response to that was that the Oslo talks, as well as the civility on the ground at this point, where you have you don't have a whole bunch of opposition members trying to launch more terrorist attacks against the government. So the idea that you need all these Russian troops and all these things down there was not really necessary. So my position is that even if the Russians did leave, they could easily be replaced by other contractors. In the end, defense contractors are a dime a dozen nowadays. So, D, you have anything you want to add to that? All right. I'll move on to the next one. Nicole, you have anything you want to add to that?
No. I actually totally agree with what you had to say right there, and I think you pretty much read on the money. So nope. I'm clear and actually in agreement with you.
All right. All right. This next one is from the New York Times .com. Explosions at Russian military plant leave many injured. At least 2 people were missing, and numerous others were treated for injuries on Saturday after blasts were reported at an explosives plant in the central Russian town of Dzerhinsk. The Interfax and RIA news agency reported. The plant, founded in Soviet times and known as the Crystal Scientific Institute, is one of the country's major developers of explosive technology for military and civilian use. It is part of Russia's Rostec, a state conglomerate that has been hurt by Western sanctions over Russian policy towards Ukraine. We just talked about Rostec in the last article. The cause of the explosion was not immediately known. Some 22 people were injured, Interfax reported, citing a source. An official at the local health ministry said that most of the injured had fragment wounds. A sanction of the facility in Dzerhinsk, about 250 miles east of Moscow, was partially destroyed and a fire broke out where explosives and ammunition, including aerial bombs, were stored, Russian news agency reported. So, you have a major facility used for weapons manufacturing, and it just happens to explode. I work in cybersecurity as well as corporate security, and most of the time facilities like this are pretty locked down, so that incidents like this don't happen. And you have fire suppression systems in place, as well as other means to reduce accidents like this. This is not like Chernobyl, right? What happened in Chernobyl was a disaster. So they've learned, many companies in building and construction agencies have learned, how to deal with accidents like this, so that what happened in Chernobyl doesn't happen anywhere else. So I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on and say this is sabotage. There's some form of sabotage here, especially at a facility that does not have frequent attacks or frequent explosives.
Absolutely. No way something like this is going to happen internally like that, where they've got lockdown, everything. Every corner is checked. It's just it's the ops are too tight in there. There's no way something like that's just going to just go blown off half cocked like that. Like that just happened. Somebody went in there and did some damage. There's no question about it. Absolutely sabotage. No question about it.
Mm-hmm.
No question about it, Mike.
DE, you have anything to add to this?
DE.
No, I think DE's away now.
Yeah.
Let me move on to the next one. Is that person in the chat talking to you, Nagon? Jose?
I don't know. Let me take a look.
All right, next one is from CNBC.com. Putin and Xi hail unprecedented ties as U.S. relations sour. Russia and China appear to be intent on strengthening their alliance and fostering deep cooperation in the face of increased political and economic hostility from the U.S. The bid to strengthen bilateral ties continues this week as Chinese President Xi Jinping is in Russia Wednesday for the start of a 3-day state visit and top levels talk with Putin. Welcome Xi and to the Kremlin on Wednesday. Putin said ties between Russia and China stood at an unprecedented level. Xi echoed that sentiment by saying that the countries' relation with had withstood trials and tribulations over the years and were now better than ever. We've managed to take our relationship to the highest level in our history, Xi said. We will continue to improve our ties and we were ready to go hand in hand with you, he told Putin at the leaders' initial meeting that was broadcast online. On Wednesday evening, Putin and Xi will attend an event to mark the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two countries. A number of trade and investment deals are expected to be signed, although a Kremlin spokesperson was unable to give more detail when contacted by CNBC. Xi will also attend and speak at Russia's annual St. Petersburg International Economic Forum that starts Thursday. Ahead of the visit, Xi remarked of the blooming relationship between the countries and the need to foster stronger ties. I look forward to charting the course of our future relationship together with Russian President Vladimir Putin, and to seeing that our comprehensive strategic partnership of coordination will stride into a new era. Our two countries enjoy strong political trust and can always count on each other's firm support on issues concerning our respective core interests and major concerns, he noted. She said the countries now had a new opportunity for growth, and we have the confidence and capability to bring our relations to a new era of greater development at higher level. Chinese Vice Foreign Minister Zhang Hanhai noted a press briefing Tuesday that the visit will be of a milestone significance in in the development of bilateral relations and surely promote greater development under the new situation. The meeting of the two prominent global powers come as Russia's relations with U.S. are at a low ebb amid continuing sanctions on this country, and China's relationship with the U.S. is fraught with trade war relations. So Russia and China, they've been basically pushed into the corner together. What do they expect from them? DE, you have anything to add to this?
Well, Mike, I just want to say something to Jose Hernandez. Jose, te gustaría de decir algo? Por favor, dígame. Escriba. Por favor. Yeah, I just want to see if this guy wants to say something. I don't know. He said, how did he arrive here? I don't know. So I don't know what he was trying to say. But anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Mike.
No, I was just going to say that Russia is strong military power. They have the ability to respond, and China is a strong economic power. They are at trade war with the United States. They have a common foe right now. Russia, sanctions on Russia has crippled the Russian economy, as well as tried to financially isolate it. And then the trade war um, with China has basically tried to gut, China's momentum from scaling. So there's a necessity for both of these countries to come together and actually have a bond, a strong political bond.
Yeah, it's kind of, I would totally agree with that. It would be very important for them to do that, and they're not. It's a little strange to me as to what's going on with respect to that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me get to this next article. All right, the last one is from Business Insider. Trump and Bolton want a piece of Iran, but the Pentagon is planning for a much different enemy. The recent White House decision to speed the deployment of an aircraft carrier battle group and other military assets to the Persian Gulf has led many in Washington and elsewhere to assume that the U.S. is gearing up for war with Iran. As in the lead up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq, U.S. officials have cited suspect intelligence data to justify elaborate war preparations. On May 13th, Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan even presented top White House officials with plans to send as many as 120,000 troops to the Middle East for possible future combat with Iran and its proxies. Later, reports indicated that the Pentagon might be making plans to send even more soldiers than that. Hawks in the White House, led by National Security Advisor John Bolton, see a war aimed at eliminating Iran's clerical leadership as a potential big win for Washington. Many top officials in the U.S. military, however, see the matter quite differently, as potentially a giant step backward into exactly the kind of low-tech ground war they've been unsuccessfully enmeshed in across the greater Middle East and Northern Africa for years, and would prefer to leave behind. Make no mistake, if President Trump ordered the U.S. military to attack Iran, it would do so, and were that to happen, there can be little doubt about the ultimate negative outcome for Iran. Its moth-eaten military machine is simply no match for the American one. Almost 18 years after Washington's war on terror was launched, however, there can be little doubt that the U.S. assault on Iran would also stir up yet more chaos across the region. displace more people, create more refugees, and leave behind more dead civilians, more ruined cities and infrastructure, and more angry souls ready to join the next terror group to pop up. It would
Disaster.
surely lead.
I'm sorry.
It would
Sorry.
surely lead to. It would surely lead to another quagmire set of ongoing conflicts for American soldiers. Think Iraq and Afghanistan exactly the type of no-win scenarios that many top Pentagon officials now seek to flee. But don't chalk such feelings up to reluctance to get bogged down in yet one more war on terror quagmire. These days, the Pentagon is also increasingly obsessed with preparations for another type of war in another locale entirely, a high intensity conflict with China, possibly in the South China Sea. After years of slogging it with the guerrillas and jihadists across the greater Middle East, the U.S. military is increasingly keen on. Sorry, I lost my place. All right. This new outlook is only bolstered by a belief that America's never ending war on terror has severely depleted its military, something obvious to both Chinese and Russian leaders who have taken advantage of Washington's extended preoccupation with the counterterrorism to modernize their forces and equip them with advanced weaponry. For the United States to remain a paramount power, so Pentagon thinking now goes, it must turn away from counterterrorism and focus instead on developing the wherewithal to decisively defeat its great power rivals. This outlook was made crystal clear by then Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis in testimony before the Senate Armed Service Committee in April 2018. The negative impact on military readiness resulting from the longest continuous period of combat in our nation's history created an overstretched and under-resourced military, he insisted. Our rivals, he added, used the same years to invest in military capabilities meant to significantly erode America's advantage in advanced technology. China, he assured the senators, is modernizing its conventional military forces to a degree that will challenge U.S. military superiority. In response, the United States had but one choice to reorient its own forces for great power competition. Long term strategic competition, not terrorism, is now primary focus of U.S. national security. Um, this is interesting.
Disastrous move for us to go into Iran in a war, right? Disastrous. Not only just for the standpoint of militarily, yeah, we can go in there and destabilize the region and turn it into another ridiculous quagmire. But what about our European allies and the business and so forth that they're dealing with Iran on? What does that mean for them? How does how we're supposed to compensate them as well for the business that they may lose and so forth? What does this mean for us economically? What are we really talking about here? Um,
Mhm.
this would be disastrous. Now, would somebody like President Trump and Pompeo and these guys, thumb something like this up? It's possible because these guys are morons. But long term, the long term implications on a move like this seem to be disastrous, given what we've seen with the Iraqi conflict and the issues we've had in the region since engaging with them in 2003, 2004. It's just doesn't make much sense. Um, what does this also mean for some of our other potential protagonists that will be playing a role in that region. Mainly, once again, Russia, China, and so forth. I just don't see where there's any benefit there. So some of the military leaders who are saying we need to move away from that are smart. The weaponeers and the guys who are trying to make a lot more money on just moving forward with perpetual war. Well, we understand how that business model works, but I don't see any which way or anywhere where this is beneficial to us. Mike, do you see any benefit to us to us doing this?
There is no real, benefit to civilians, but from a military standpoint, taking out Iran neutralizes China's oil imports because they get a good portion of their oil from Iran. So cutting off China's energy supply from Iran, cutting off India's supply of oil from Iran, and being 90 minutes away from Russia through the Caspian Sea by taking out Iran's northern border, puts Russia in a pretty pickle because they can't. They have corvettes sitting inside the Caspian, but that's nothing compared to putting troops right there at the belly, the belly button of Russia. They're not. You get like a multifaceted agenda completed, but how long can you hold it for?
That's holding a knife to their belly. How do you think they're going to respond? And how are the Chinese going to respond when they are now cut off and have to play a single role here? No, man. This looks like you're trying to gin up, in some respects, to almost another global conflict. That could play out over the years. That could be rather disastrous. And I don't know if this is a route that we need to take. Certainly at this time, I don't see a lot of benefits in that. Some of the short term stuff looks decent, but what about the long term? And when we start talking about symmetrical and asymmetrical warfare, we have to look at its natural, unpredictable nature of what we're dealing with. Okay, we cannot see all of the angles that will come out here, and if we can't see all the angles, that means that there's something that's going to come out that's not going to work out well in our favor. And I don't know if we really want to go down that road. Do you disagree or?
No, I don't disagree at all. And I think a fight with Iran would actually open up the possibility of a global crash on the market because if the ingress and egress passageways for the Straits of Hormuz are compromised, well, not compromised, but have been enacted by the Iranian Navy, and then you have missiles being launched from Iran into Saudi Arabia to take out Aramco. That's a domino effect that's going to be reverberated throughout a short period of time.
Yeah, prospects here don't look very good, but I hope that's not a.
Wasn't
is
sure.
Everything all right? Is everything all right over there? Anyway.
Oh man.
I certainly hope that we don't take this path. I don't think it's going to be a very good one in the long run.
Mm-hmm. And what's the benefit for U.S.? I mean, for Israel, they get what they want. Okay, you take out Iran. Okay, now what?
Yeah, I mean, and see, this is my thing too. People saying Iran is degraded. Iran is ready for a certain level of conflict with Israel. They actually are. They've been gearing up. They've been preparing for this possibility. I don't think things are going to go as smooth and easy as those might think. I just don't believe that is going to be the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we I think there are better alternatives to this, but we will have to see, and we have to look at the key players in the region. The muscular rivals that we're going to be dealing with, holding a knife to Russia's belly. I question the 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 good sense of this
No,
move.
they're not. They're not going to be too happy about that. If you go back to 2008 with the war with Georgia, Georgia is right under Russia's belly again.
Yep.
So they responded almost immediately.
Yeah, I just don't think that that's a very good move, and I don't know if we're capable of dealing with this long term. So we have to be very, very intelligent here. We have to be smart, and we have to look at what are our European allies, how are they going to deal with this? They're having their economies tied to this, tied to Iran as well. Um, how are we going to deal with that? How are we going to deal with that? I mean, I know there'll be those who will sit there and say, "Yeah, we're down with you." When economies start dropping, and people start, dealing with harsh exactions, um, you know, this could get a bit unpredictable.
Right, right, and it's going to be exacerbated because no one's going to take this line down. Europeans already said that they don't want anything to do with the conflict because it doesn't benefit them.
They've gone through. We talked about the Crimean War. We've gone through World War One, World War Two, with them, and look at the outcomes of some of these conflagrations and what that's brought about. Europe doesn't want this. They've got a long history of looking at what this might mean. I think they're done with some of this. I think they've had very long period since the Dark Ages, straight up to the end of the Ottoman Empire, and then moving into the new American hegemony and all that's gone through. Especially that came from the German German aggression and the Prussian, if you will, empire re-annealing underneath the Nazis. Nah, man, I don't see Europe embracing this. I don't. They haven't done well under these circumstances over time, and I don't think they're going to do well on this as well. So I hope we have a better sense, but I don't know. Like I said, the prospects here are not good. Um, I don't see them as good prospects, Mike. I don't know. I don't know how you're viewing it, but I don't know if anyone in the chat has got any other ideas on this. But I don't see this as working very good. And if anybody in the chat has any input on this, I'd like to see you guys expand on this a little bit in the chat. Certainly. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I was just going to say I co-sign what you're saying because everybody wants to see Iran taken down, but no one wants to really deal with the consequences. You have to deal with 10,000 missiles sitting inside Lebanon. You got to deal with whatever Syria has an ace up its sleeve. From my understanding, Syria has a pretty lethal doomsday weapon that they have not even used yet. And I think that's what Israel may be searching for, right? Taking out all these military targets. They're looking for it, but they can't find it. And then you still have to deal with Yemen. You got a bunch of guys in sandals, taking out Saudi's military.
Yep.
And you still have Libya.
Down. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you still have Libya. You still have Egypt.
Yeah.
it would drag Africa right into the war because
it would. It would, and some heavy proxy wars would be fought there as well. So I mean, this as we've seen in the past, we would see this again. It wouldn't be a good thing. Look at Israel and how they got thwarted in many ways by Lebanon. Just look at what I don't see a lot of good coming out of this. I don't. I hope we don't extend there, but we might. We might, and the prospects will not be good.
Yeah, BGS Ibmore is in the chat. Shout out to Black Gnostics. You can come onto the panel if you want. You should have a link in your email. Go ahead, DE.
Yeah, BGS, jump in here, man. I'd like to get your feedback on this as well.
Look, in a very odd move, not what was it? A couple months ago, the generals told the Pentagon told them we will need 120,000 people to set foot in Iran. Do we have 120,000? That's not the ones who are going to get killed and have to replace. Where are you going to put park that aircraft carrier that you sending up there to pretend that you are building up your forces? The United States cannot fight a war in Iran. It cannot. It will be people in America don't have the stomach for a war against Iran. I'm telling you right now, it'd be worse than Vietnam. They would have to literally carpet bomb Iran and kill off all the people. Because no matter how they go in, the war is never going to end. And from the time the first bomb dropped in Iran, the world economy, the stock market as we know it, is going to be down to 600.
You hit it right in the head right there. The economic fallout of this will be terrible. Like I said, Europe, they depend on a lot of this. They have partnerships there that are different from ours, so that everything is not the same. You're talking about serious economic destruction, and when it gets to be like that, you cannot determine what end or what side people will play at the end of the day. If it comes down to whether one is eaten or not, this is very serious shit. So America can't jump out here and play some of the games that we were playing before. We can't. It's a different game. The thing has re-annealed differently, and our economies now are so intertwined. It's not about just coming out here and just blowing everybody up and taking over certain areas. It's not. And holding a knife to Russia's belly right now, and China sitting on the sidelines. You're gonna starve them out. You're gonna cut their oil game out. We saw what happened with Japan. We did that in the Second World War, even though Japan was making very aggressive moves into China at the time. We did that to hold them back. This would be different. This is different than what was. But the end results would be the same as far as starving them out. Really. This is what we're going to do and force them to play a certain hand. It's ridiculous, man. I mean, and that would cause huge economic problems for us because the Chinese could just sit back and just dump a lot of our dump a lot of our debt. I mean, there's a lot of things that could really go on. The economic issues here are massive, are massive, and I don't know. I think somebody saw somebody, I don't know who it was, who said that it could be a world collapse. If there's a war, economic world collapse, and that's kind of what we're looking at. So I think the smarter heads should prevail here, because I don't actually. This is not rocket science. I don't think this is that complex.
Well,
this is not. This ain't
look
rocket
at what
science.
look at what's happening now. Before, the two talking heads used to be all over the news talking about how they're going to destroy Iran and all that. Now they go into Russia and saying help. Now they go into China saying help. Even your favorite guy is coming up saying, Iran is not really a bad place. We can talk.
Yeah, we have. I mean,
I would really like to talk to Iran. Let us sit down and talk. You can come to some agreement. Huh? That's not what the two talking heads were saying not long ago.
But see, Obama and them were saying that before. The Obama administration, that's what they were on. They were on that. They were on that level of talk. These hawks come in here, and these morons come in here talking that mess, and you kind of get this going. And when you do all the permutations, you start to look at this thing from a lot of different angles. It's really not a very good scenario. It's not a good scenario, and we're putting a lot of our allies at immense risk, economic. A lot of our allies, and that's the big issue, and that's what we have to really worry about more so than anything else. allies or European allies. This is big. This is not, a game here. And do we have the economic wherewithal to handle this? And no, we don't. And this would not be good. The exactions here would be ruinous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Iraq has already come out and said last week that if there is a conflict with Iran, that Iraq would take Iran's side. So we know now from Lebanon to Syria to Iraq, Afghanistan has already said that they're backing up Iran if there is a conflict. India relies on Iranian oil. Cutting off India from Iranian oil could send Indian troops into the conflict. China gets its oil, major portion of its oil from Iran. Cutting off China, putting an oil embargo on China would bring back 1941 in the Pacific.
Exactly. I was saying it before. You're looking at a domino effect, and it's not a very smart move at this stage of the game. Hopefully this is just a lot of talk, but who knows if this president will be desperate, thinking that maybe things might be rough for him for re-election, and maybe decide to come into some shit like this. Who knows? But it would be disastrous. And I would have to think some of our military leaders who understand the politics of this type of war, because all war is political, and the economics behind it, would have a more clever and clearer head on this. Anyway, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that if you're North Korea and you're looking at all this and you're saying, why would I want to do a deal with this guy if he's already tore up the deal with these guys?
Exactly.
Why would I want to do a deal with you? If you keep reneging on your own contracts, I don't want to do a contract with
you.
Hey, isn't Brazil? I'm looking at what Brazil is doing. I'm looking seriously at what Brazil, because Brazil has a big hand that they can play in this. If the I don't know this. Oh my goodness, I don't even know what to call him, because he right now is standing in Trump's shadow. And if he steps out from Trump's shadow, Brazil can actually play a really huge part in what happens in the world in the next 10, 20 years.
Brazil right now, we basically couped their government. We took out Lula, Dilma, and all that. We knocked their asses out the box. Put this guy in here, who was more or less, an operative of the CIA. To be quite frank with you, threw his ass in here, so we can control them, and we can control those oil leases from Petrobras. That's what this whole move was about. We had a bloodless coup thrown in that country and put this guy in there. And their job is to sit there and do exactly what we tell them. So they're not, with all that oil, they're not going to come in here and try to upset the apple cart. They ain't going to try to do that.
Yeah, but now
this is the reason why we did what we did in that country. And trust me, I know this intimately. I sat here and had my apartment damn near empty during freaking the Olympics for Zika and all these other freaking lies they roll out to try to hurt the economy, to knock people down. And the economic hitmen came in there and did what they did in Brazil, to get the Dilma administration out of there, that had a lot of ties to, of course, to Lula and the whole game, and then the game that they were playing, which was in line with Venezuela and so forth. They didn't want that. They didn't want that. They wanted to change the face of that game, and that's what we're looking at. So right now, they're sitting back chilling. They ain't gonna do shit. Ain't gonna do a move unless we tell them. That's what's going on.
Well, he got an opportunity if he can look the other way. If China and Russia can talk to him, say, look, you got a position to play here. If you got any sense, do this. You don't have to do it step right now, but just slowly put it into place.
Listen. Their play is going to be It's going to be what we tell them as of right now with the current administration and the administrations that we're going to try to keep in there. That's how that's going down. You know, sorry to say, but that's
you see
that's what's up.
You see the people are already starting to start marches again against him.
Yeah, there's some because the economy and some of the things that are going there is not that great. What they're trying to do is bring a lot more foreign investment in there. You know, because they've dropped the Haiti, the Ri, as you guys call it, but they call the Haiti is. I think as of yesterday, because I watch it very closely, because I'm renting my place down here, so I'm not even getting American dollars. I'm dealing more with AIs these days. But it was 393, almost 4 to 1. It was up to 410 at one point. And they're going to continue to do this to try to get more people to play. But very interesting game. Very interesting game right now. And very interesting game. But as of right now in Brazil, the scenario you're talking about, and these guys coming here and playing a big role and getting some brinkmanship in here now. We cooed that government. See to it that stuff like this didn't happen. Stuff like this is not going to happen. Sorry to say. I know there'll be those. Oh, what's he talking about? I don't agree. Oh. These are the facts.
Well, I agree with you. I agree with what you said. But what I'm saying is that I'm hoping that he recognized that, you know what, things are not going to play out the way that Trump is talking, So maybe we as a country should start charting a course much closer to the BRICS, so that when this thing plays out, we would be in a stronger position. You know what I'm saying? I know he's the handpicked man, is alphabet handpicked man in South America, but even a handpicked man sometimes have a change of heart. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you gotta look.
He's there to play a very specific role. And fam, you have to understand how this shit is played. He's there to play a role, not he ain't up there to challenge us. Okay, you saw Noriega and all those guys who did that shit.
Yeah, that's true.
What happened with them? So.
He might be looking at that scenario too and say, you know what, that could happen.
So they ain't there to challenge Jack. Dilma, Lula, and them, they were in there. They were challenging this shit, and they're gone. They're gone. They're gone. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Latin America would come out the victor out of all this because the conflict wouldn't be in their backyard.
Correct.
I think that's maybe what DE may be referring to.
No. DE is right. DE is correct overall in what he's saying. I'm not disagreeing with DE at all. DE is correct in what he is saying. What I am saying is that they're here to see to it that does not happen.
Exactly, you're right.
Yeah. They Dilma and Lula and them are out. Okay, because this is the kind of move that they would play. All right. Well, we're gonna play this. They were trying to coup Chavez all day long, and look at the nature of the country now. All right. This is the game that we're playing. Once again, hemispheric comparative. All right. Goes back to the old Monroe. Let's keep that in line. That's just how that's been here for damn near the last 200 years. Go coming up on it. So that's where we are. That's where we are, fam. And I'm just calling it like it is.
I mean, if he seriously, look what happened to Mexico. Just one tweet. Hey, we're gonna raise tariffs on Mexico for what? Brazil should be questioning that. You know what I'm saying? This guy. I mean, not the opposition at least should be looking at that and saying, "Hey, look, we gotta retake this presidency. We gotta get into the House. We gotta retake the government."
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot to destabilize that place. We did a lot. I mean, remember the Olympics.
Oh, yeah.
Zika, crime. Keep mad at here. It's all fucked up. They literally hurt them in their in their Olympics. And I saw that place that they had that town cooking. That place looked great, and there was nobody down there.
Hey,
There was nobody down there.
From the time they took out my favorite place on Atlantica, I knew things were changing. You know what I'm saying?
And they had everything blocked off. You couldn't hardly go there. The beaches were clean, beautiful, lights under the water, lighting. They had this place looking like Paradiso. But they tore it out, man. They economically hit them, through the media and so forth. Apartment's empty. I should have made huge money on that. And then Jack, apartment empty during the Olympics. All right, you explain that. Explain that. Should have people there fighting. Damn, they're willing to knife each other to get in there.
Everybody is expected to make a few dollars off of that Olympics.
Didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
The way it's supposed to. It was ill. It was ill.
And all the money that they had spent on it just to get it established, there was no return on the investment. So at least not to my knowledge.
Not at the level. They certainly didn't come off there. Didn't come off. It was bad. It was a pretty bad scene. So
all the places that they spent money on and planned for a second life. All the Olympic villages and all that they plan to sell and rent and all that gonna bring revitalize certain areas. It now is falling apart, man.
Well, no, it's not falling apart. I mean, I know what's going on the ground there intimately. I know it very well. It's not places looking better than ever, but the only problem that we have is that you just don't have enough people going down there now. Don't have enough Americans involved going down there and spending no dough.
That U.S. dollar.
Yeah. We just so just don't have enough of that going down, which is problematic.
Well, the way how I'm looking at it here is that okay, you go into a conflict with Iran, you go into a conflict with Russia because you got NATO on the border with Russia. NATO recently said last month that the focus shouldn't be on Russia, it should be on China. So now they're talking about going after China. And you have the U.S. military talking about Iran, and then you have the skirmishes happening all over the Middle East. That the power of vacuum has been left behind, where you have Shia versus Sunni, you have Saudi Arabia biting their nails because the idea of a strong Iranian presence in the region from Iraq to Syria to Lebanon, Turkey being in opposition of Saudi Arabia, taking positions inside Doha, inside as well as inside Somalia. It's only a few hours away from from Saudi Arabia across the water. So, a lot of moving pieces are happening right now, and I don't think people really understand. Europe is politically unstable right now. You saw the recent parliament elections, man. A lot of upsets and stuff going on over there. Brexit. They United Kingdom can't get their shit together. They're too busy throwing tomatoes at Trump as he comes to London.
I mean, they've got economic issues there. It's all about economics. Brexit, they're trying to run out, but where are they going? They've got serious problems. The conservatives came in there with their austerity game and ran everything down, and then it hasn't yielded hardly anything at all. So, a lot of real issues going on. The right wing came in there with all that craziness, and hadn't yielded jack. So, so now they're sitting there saying, well, what are we going to do? You're going to talk about having, Iran, come in there and they're shut down, creating a war and making economic opportunities over there even worse. You are talking about some really crazy stuff going on. Really crazy. Not a good idea, man. Not a good idea.
Joe Black in the chat asked a question. He says, "So what would be the benefit? Would it be to go to war? And place, could we make a profit from this if it happened?" I don't think you can make a profit off of this. This is something that's cataclysmic. Um, Not because of you might get hit with a bullet, but because um, the market may not be favorable to you at all. It may not be favorable to you. I mean, we see what's happening right now with the tariffs on Mexico. You're going to see. I mean, they're talking 5% each month until Mexico complies with this immigration policy. So you're talking between now and December, if Mexico doesn't comply, 30% tariffs on goods coming from Mexico. Can you imagine 30% more on avocados, 30% more on bananas, 30% more on cars? Because Volkswagen and Ford and some of these car companies have manufacturing facilities in Mexico. It's going to be an economic disaster. Carrier who makes these air conditioners has recent manufacturing facility in Mexico now that they left the Midwest for.
Yeah, they sure did. Yeah, that caused a lot of problems. That happened in 2017. So
Yeah.
they're now. Yeah, exactly correct.
We're talking about stuff that is manufactured in Mexico, but what about all the stuff that grown in Guatemala, Honduras, Belize, that comes across the Mexican border when Mexico decides, you know what, we want to recoup some of our money, so we're going to put taxes on this crossing our border. All your bananas, like you said, avocados, fruits and vegetables that are grown in South America that's coming up by train. Guess what's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
That's going to take a hit too. So all these countries in South America, they're going to take a hit. The people who are growing this stuff, now when they get put off the plantation, guess where they're going to head to? Up to Mexico, standing by the border waiting to get across. So you're creating a bigger problem than you really should.
The thing, I paid $1.70 on Sunday for avocado, right? For one avocado. You're talking a 30% hike on that. 30% hike on an avocado would be, cataclysmic for the market, because if the market can't stabilize, man, you can't really profit from that. How are you going to profit from that?
You're
Who's going
asking
to buy that
for
stuff?
you're asking for a disaster. This would not work out well. This is not going to work. It just isn't going to work. This is not anything that we even need to be even seriously considering. And anyone who is, they need their heads examined. Now, these leaders currently, it's crazy and ridiculous as I think, Trump and them are. I don't think they want to go this one. I don't think they want. I don't think they want to cross this bridge. I kind of don't think so. I just don't.
They're already on the bridge, bro. See us. You say they don't want to cross the bridge, but they're already on the bridge. There's no turning back.
They may be on the bridge, but crossing it is a whole different game. Is all I'm saying. Crossing that bridge is a mother. So that's what I'm saying. Now, maybe you are right. Maybe you are right, D. Maybe you are right. But I certainly hope not.
If you're gonna park, say you're gonna park, like we send a whole armada to the Persian Gulf. You're gonna go out there and you're gonna just drop anchor off Iran and say, well, okay, we're here to start a war. 1 year from now, when you move it out of there, what are you going to tell the rest of the world? Well, Iran complied. Iran didn't do a damn thing. They said, hey, we're not going to negotiate with you. We're not going to even talk to you. And Iran is doing things right, because from the time you sit down at the table and start to talk, the U.S. can manipulate the situation. If you don't talk until the U.S. say, you know what, let's come back and look at the treaty that we have and see what we can make it better. If they had gone that route, the world would be behind the U.S. right now. But they didn't. They tore up the treaty and said, we're going to start over. You're going to do things our way. And with all the other things going on, that your hands, when the information came out about Libya and about what our illustrious First Lady was doing throughout the world as Secretary of State, then people started to look at her start looking at the U.S. with a different view. And then what they did to what's the name here the other day in London, you know, with Wiki, what is the name now? What they did to him, Assange. What they did to Assange, everybody's saying, hey, everybody's looking at the U.S. now and saying, are we next? And they're trying to avoid being next. You know what I'm saying? So now you got people who say, you know what? China never does this kind of thing to people. So we're going to go into Belt Road like Italy does, like Italy did, you know?
Right.
So when this thing start happening, your whole, the plan that you had in mind start falling apart. Then you stop talking about, you see the news start focusing on what you're doing and what you're doing wrong, and your people in the Midwest or whoever voted for you, you still gotta prove to them that you're this. The words come out your mouth mean something. So they're on the bridge. What they're gonna do next now is are they gonna show? They're gonna turn back and walk back, or what?
No, they're gonna have to negotiate their way out of this. Russia is not going to tolerate Iran being taken out because they don't want to have to deal with the blowback from it. Iran is actually 90 minutes away from Russia. China is not going to going to be happy about that because they get their energy from there. Plus, they have investments inside Iran as well. 5G being included. A lot of Huawei ZTE technology is inside Iran now. North Korea is looking at this and saying, "You guys are always bullshitters for the most part, for lack of a better description. You're a bunch of bullshitters. Why would we want to sign a non-nuclear agreement with you? What's the point of that? Or denuclearization in the Korean Peninsula? Why would they do that? Like, there's no benefit to them for that. There's just a whole lot of political blunder coming out of all of this talk, and it's all points back to some little small occupied place in the Middle East called Israel, for the most part. It's all in their best interest and nothing in the U.S. best interest. And a lot of these countries are trying to, in the European Union, are trying to recover. I mean, the UK and Brexit, it's going to cost them 80 to 110 billion euros just to get out. The European Union is teetering right now. They're teetering. They have a lot of unsavory characters going on in there. Ukraine is on fire. It's a basket case. They want to join the European Union for what? I have no idea. The European Union doesn't gain anything from Ukraine joining. All of these conflicts, man, it's just like, is it really necessary at the end of the day? Poor old Mexico. Dope boys won't be able to get their dope across the border now. The tariffs don't just extend to avocados and bananas, man. It's going to go all the way into to the dope as well, because they'll shut. If the U.S. military has to shut their border down, they pretty much can do it. So those are my final comments on this. You all can drop your final comments before we close out.
Well, you said that we have to negotiate ourselves out of this, and I agree with you. There is no, not even in Venezuela now. The world, we can't even go into Venezuela and overthrow the government down there because the world going to look at it as here's the big bad bully of the U.S. instead of the U.S. is doing what's best for the rest of the world. That's the way people all around the world used to look at U.S. actions before. You know, the U.S. is the leader, and we will follow it because it's going to benefit us. Now everybody's looking at it as though the U.S. doesn't know what it's doing, and if we follow the U.S., uh, we might be next and to get our head cut off. So we have to pull back. You know, it's like 2000 when Obama got elected president. We were well right now we're in a more precarious position than we were then. But when Obama got elected president, was people were saying, you know what, we want a better United States. The people in America were saying we want a better United States, so we're gonna elect this black man because we think he's going to, you know. And what 2 years after he left office, we reversed, we reverted back to 2001. Not even 2008, but 2001. And with 2001, as far as the world is concerned, and then 2006 in the economic situation, because our economy is about to is just teetering on the edge because of what's going on. So we have to negotiation better start right now. Trump, Father Trump, if he can get rid of the two talking heads that he's got in there, put a rein on Israel, and start talking to the rest of the world about straightening out, you know, what's going on.
I for one think they should abandon Tel Aviv, but that's just me. Nagone, you have any final comments you want to add before we close out?
No, I think we all are kind of in agreement. I think it's a pretty good conversation here. I just think, you know, going forward with this, I don't see much good coming out of it. So hopefully we don't we don't engage. Hopefully we don't cross that bridge. Hopefully we don't cross that bridge. All right, that's it.
All right, thank you all for joining us. Please hit the like button if you have not already done so before you leave. Share the video if possible. Refer back to the docket in the description beneath the video if you want to reference any of these talking points or any of these pieces of information. And we out.